than just sports, right?
Yeah.
So, back of a napkin right now.
All right, so I guess I'll call this,
Good.
call this
Yeah.
meeting to order. I'll do roll call real quick. Yes.
Alrighty, Councilmember Matavetsky,
Present.
Councilmember Middleton,
Present.
previous Councilmember Rathmel is absent, and that, Councilmember Hodge is here as a member of council, but not as a member of the committee, and thank you, Mayor Grant, for joining us. Damon Cornwell, one of our guest speakers. You're here as a guest, correct? Yes, great.
Okay, awesome. So thank you guys all for coming. The nature of this meeting is for local law to establish a new chapter in unlicensed cannabis activity in the city of Binghamton. So first, Mayor, will you start with just a background on this law?
Sure.
Thank you.
So essentially, as part of New York State's cannabis law generally, one of the things that was added, you know, as the cannabis law has kind of evolved over the years, is granting local governments the ability for inspection and regulation and enforcement remedies against illicit cannabis or unlicensed cannabis activity. You know, OCM, Office of Cannabis Management, has enforcement divisions, and the governor has been trying to add to their enforcement capabilities. But the bottom line is it's a very large state. They are going to be stretched very, very thin. And while they have had activity here in the Binghamton area, it will be ultimately the local levels of government that are going to be closest to the issue and can respond most efficiently and effectively to complaints of unlicensed cannabis activity, as well as enforce against and kind of shut down that activity. So this is in consultation with the state cannabis law, section 131, provides the city ability and specifically the police department to inspect, and if there are severe cases, shut down unlicensed cannabis retail locations. The thing that's kind of important about this is kind of twofold. The reason why, as a city, we should really be aggressive at shutting down these places. That number one, they're selling unlicensed, untested products, very likely either ripping off consumers, selling things that have illegal substances, chemicals, things that are not tested, things that are coming in from overseas, and could be potentially dangerous to consumers. Number two is that they're selling to minors. Licensed cannabis establishments like Just Breathe, like others, and they've done studies on this that just came out, are incredibly effective at carding, monitoring who they're selling to, not selling to minors, meet and exceed all of the security requirements that the state offers, and are doing a great job. These unlicensed retailers are not doing that and are selling to minors. The third thing is that they're stealing from the taxpayers. We get a portion of sales from all of the legal cannabis retailers in the city of Binghamton. These unlicensed shops do not provide any tax revenue to the city of Binghamton or Broome County or the state of New York. And, we have to keep that in mind as well. And these places are making a lot of money from these, and it's stealing from the taxpayers. And it is in our best interest to have local control to shut these places down, to both, improve public health, but also support our legal businesses that have gone through a very, very difficult process to obtain a license. In the case of Just Breathe and Damien was the first outside of Manhattan to actually do it, and is doing things the right way. And so to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. It allows us to provide safety for residents and support what is a new but growing industry within the city of Binghamton.
So
Go ahead.
I had a quick question. Before they even get to the point of the shops, is there a way we can prevent them from opening, or there's no way you can enforce that? So before we even go through like the legalities, isn't there a way we can stop them from opening, like before it even gets to the point of them selling to minors, for them selling lace things? Isn't there a way we can, like, can we get to, like, can you prevent the opening of a business like this before?
So obviously we have zoning enforcement mechanisms, but a lot of the, at least in the city of Binghamton, the illicit sales are being done under the guise of another type of business, a convenience store, a head shop, another, kind of a generic retail, which makes it very, very difficult to.
Okay, I'm gonna ask an embarrassing question. What's a head shop?
A head shop is basically, it sells accessories for
Okay.
smoking, bongs, rolling papers, that sort of things. So
I guess I thought that already was a pot shop.
Yeah,
So it was it was devices.
Yeah, exactly. Which
Paraphernalia.
which would be completely legal. I mean,
Okay.
you can sell those. There's nothing
Right.
illegal, but if you're also selling unlicensed cannabis products, that's a problem.
So we can't enforce like cracking down on those, like before they even, so you're saying that they're basically sneaking it? Is that what you're basically saying? That's what's
Yeah.
going on?
So the real reason why the state allowed local municipalities to adopt this is that there was a recognition that, if someone opens up a store that they're not allowed to be zoning, it's a pretty long process in order to shut that down.
Okay.
And a head shop that is allowed in a certain retail area, without these enforcement mechanisms, it's going to be very difficult to shut them down because they're a retail business and they have other products that are maybe legal. So going that route is not going to abate the issue.
Okay.
We need an additional powers to allow us to actually shut those down. And what Damien could probably speak to is the ineffectiveness of the current situation at dealing with these unlicensed shop, both from what the powers that the municipality has and the slow response of state enforcement officials, maybe reasonably, but nonetheless, not doing a forceful job at getting these things shut down.
Thank you. Hi Damien, how are you?
Hi there, how are you?
I'm good. So can you just talk about in the beginning how the process worked for you to obtain your license and how hard it was for you to get that?
For sure. So in the beginning, the MRTA is legislation that was written that allowed us to become licensed cannabis establishments. Now, I had never had any justice impact in my past. However, I'd done a lot of work with not-for-profits, and that's what allowed me to get the opportunity to apply. So I applied in tandem with the Urban League, which is why a lot of the things that we do are philanthropic in nature. Now, the reason for the MRTA was that the idea, which was progressive in thought, which was, hey, listen, if you have these communities that were hurt by the war on drugs and disenfranchised, you should give these folks an opportunity, since there was an appetite to make cannabis legal, to actually open up shops, and then you can kind of create wealth within the community, get those people working, and then at the same time, put some of that revenue back to work in your local communities. I mean, let's be very clear. I think in the statewide level, in the gray markets, we see $7 to $8 billion in marijuana sales. Think about that. So at least right now, I would say about $7 million unregulated. Okay. So that's the idea of the MRTA. So when I applied, it took an awful long time. It took a long time. We worked on it in 2022. We were a hemp retail place, and then eventually we crossed over and became a legal cannabis shop in 2023. And we were the third to open in the state and the fourth licensed brand in the state, but in the first to open in upstate. Now, I want to be very clear. This is not really a discussion of unregulated versus regulated, but more a discussion of equity. How would it impact our communities if I pulled back the $500,000 I gave in taxes the last 2 years? And if that were the case, why is it any more fair for you to make more money than we do, not invest it in your community, your daycares, your urban leagues, your vet programs, your single parent households, which we've done, and then just continue to pocket that money and go forward without any obligation to what it was designed to do, which is help our communities. I mean, that was the entire crux of it. Okay. So what's happening right now is it's as the mayor said, folks will stand the shop up and they just don't declare. Right? They go into the offices that, hey, we're going to do A, but in fact, they end up doing B. Again, I wouldn't ever disparage a man's hustle, but again, in terms of equity, it's not really fair that we're locked into some of these different things, these rules and regulations, and no one else is, and the benefit is massive. I mean, we're talking $300,000-$400,000 a month.
Mhm.
Think of what I just said in gross revenues. And illegal shops are absolutely bound, and our margins are preset by the state. So I just can't call up a guy and have product come in the trunk, right? 100 pounds or whatever it may be, bag it, tag it, and put it out there. I can't walk out and on a Friday night and give free weed away to kids on the block. It's totally illegal. And the stuff we get in our stores is already sealed and packaged. We're not even allowed to open it, which is why our margins are so thin. But folks that get it in the unregulated market can do absolutely that. So their margins are super, super high. And on the backside, there is no obligation to repay that money back into their communities. So when you look at some of the board budget shortfalls you have in your towns and your communities and the need for, there's a plethora of things. I mean, nobody knows better than the mayor or any of you at this table, all the things that are needed in our town that you need money for. And you want to tell everybody yes, but you just can't because you don't have it. Well, that's the idea. These are engines, regulated stores are engines that can help you get those things done for your community members. And what it is it's an opportunity for you to lead. You to lead. People in your community want to see accountability. No one wants to come to work to do it wrong. And no one enjoys it when things are not fair and equitable in your community. It makes them turn a blind eye to what they should be doing, right? Order is key. And I'm not anything other than just a regular guy, but I'm telling you that stuff is important. You know, where do you draw the line? At one point, if we don't have laws and rules that we follow, then what do we have? And if we don't have any, then let's not have any. But I know that's not going to happen. So it would be a better idea to have some accountability.
And thank you. And how has that affected your business, like with these illegal shops? Like, can you go into a little detail about that?
Well, it's significant. In fact, let's look at it from a state level. We know the state thought the estimates were, I think they estimated high at one time, sorry. You know, I think they thought the market was going to be $10 billion. That's not true. I think it's more between $7 and $8 billion a year. But the state just flipped its first $1 billion in regulated sales. Now, in my opinion, you could fall upstairs faster than that if there wasn't some kind of accountability. I mean, cannabis is like running water downhill. The problem is without any kind of accountability or rules in play or some kind of enforcement that keeps unregulated shops at a minimum or out of the equation, it's more like a creek instead of a Niagara Falls. I mean, that's the real issue. And hold on, I'm not done. And the other thing is it significantly impacts your workplace because I think we have probably 20 people on the payroll, somewhere around there. And I have 4 people that work in our shop that actually had criminal records and they have amazing careers. Some of the best employees we've ever had because that's what we were designed to do. But I want to tell you that without some kind of accountability, it de-incentivizes investment from outside sources. It de-incentivizes the private sector from coming in, and it doesn't make it a good investment for people that are looking to make money on the industry because there's a hole in the boat, so to speak, if you understand what I'm saying. Well, why would I invest in that boat that we can't keep water out of, right? That's what's happening. So the idea and the concept of the law is brilliant. New York State was the first to ever do it. Absolutely brilliant. And if applied correctly or run correctly, man, you could have outstanding results. You know, we do okay, but we should be doing much, much better. And the better we do, the better we can make our communities.
Digging back, because we've been in this discussion for quite a while. I can't find I apparently don't have the specific notes, but I did speak to someone who was involved with the state side of this law, that kind of the enabling legislation for this. And they did bring up that there are already while they support this as an additional measure, an additional tool, that they did bring up that other communities have been enforcing. They haven't had this particular tool, but they've had other mechanisms for going after these shops and have been successful. I don't know. I guess that's a question more directed at you, why we haven't taken measures we're legally able to take. Again, that's not saying that this isn't a good proposal.
Sure.
That-
So let's use like the lockdown law as an
Yeah.
example. So we obviously utilize a lockdown law. But the types of commercial activity that we're talking about, a lot of times it's difficult to assign a call for service or a crime with this specific location. And so one of the other things too that I think that we should all be cognizant of is that, you know, in order to utilize, let's say, a lockdown law, we're talking about enterprise level narcotics investigations on these illicit cannabis shops, right? Which is very difficult to tie it to sometimes the actual location versus the individuals that are involved. And so while that is a tool, the nature of the types of shops that are operating make those existing enforcement measures more difficult. We have looked into it. We've looked at even when OCM comes in placards, which they've done at multiple locations, and they're open kind of the next day. This is purpose-built to focus on exactly what's happening in the city of Binghamton, and is kind of the missing piece with enforcement. To your point earlier, Councilwoman, about, hey, you know, when these things crop up and they're not legal, why don't we just shut them down? The process in order to do that, because of what all of the rights that are allowed towards the business and the fact that we have to cede a lot of that just to the courts, delays, and a lot of times the evidence that we have to require is so massive to get a zoning enforcement letter, it's not practical.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the conversation because it's now been so long ago, but I believe one of the methods that towns have been using is dealing with the landlords, because the businesses are often rent the space that they're in, and they're violating their stuff, and the landlords, you know.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah,
Can I speak
go
to
for
that?
it.
If I come rent from you and I don't disclose that that's what I'm gonna do, I sign a lease, and you are just trying to provide for your family,
Yeah.
your rent to me, is it really fair that someone come and prosecute you because I wasn't upfront with you? It's very, very tough.
I don't
Right.
think it was a prosecution type of a thing, but
Even still, penalize
yeah.
me, fine me for not getting the right tenant. I think there's a couple things when you peel back the layers of the onion here on some of the enforcement. No one wants to reinstitute the war on drugs. That's very, very important, which is why you need something that's built specific for this particular endeavor, right? You don't want to criminalize people. No one at the state level wants to reintroduce that element. But at the same time, there has to be some kind of accountability so the process can work as intended, right? You cannot run these businesses when at the same time there are many, many, many other businesses that are running unregulated. I owned a bar for many, many years. What happens if a guy opens up a bar and decides to do what he wants on Main Street and he doesn't have a liquor license? I mean, it just can't happen. It just absolutely cannot happen. What happens if he starts selling that and other things in that bar, doing what he wants or she wants? The fabric of society just does not allow it. If I had
so what is the actual process? I assume somewhere they've been, we've had some experience at some point over the last
With
many years
with
where
the new
someone
law?
doesn't. No, I was gonna do the liquor example, that like we must have shut somebody down for not having a liquor license or some such. And what does that look
Yeah,
like? And
so-
how does that compare to what we're proposing here?
The resources and activity of the state liquor authority dwarf the enforcement activity of OCM. I mean, it's not even close. The amount of licensed on-premise establishments from SLA, the fact that SLA also controls the distribution of beer and liquor. And so, and this is getting a little in the weeds, but if you do not have an SLA license, you can't buy from a beer or liquor distributor. So then they kind of affect all aspects of the business. Illicit cannabis retailers are not going through state approved distributors, right? So there's this black market that's happening. SLA is just well more resourced across the state. And there are specific SLA laws that provide municipalities the ability to shut down. Any establishment can be, during their hours of operation, can be visited by law enforcement really at any time to check compliance.
I had a question. I spoke with someone from Cannabis NYC. You've heard of that? So I guess like they kind of have an approach of like equity driven, like to educate people before the enforcement. Would that be something that do you think that would hinder the process of kind of, so it's not just enforcement, but it's also educating people on the reasons why they should? Because I don't think, you know, you both are explaining like the process and how it really hurts, but I don't think people understand that. So when people read this and they're like, oh, they're trying to shut down the little person, and you know, just breathe is just mad because other people are making money. And that's what it looks like in that process. But us having this conversation today, you're explaining the reasons why these things are important. I think that maybe like an education piece, like kind of to this, like, I'm not sure if you'd be interested in something like that, Mayor and Damien, would kind of help, like, just educating people, like, listen, like, this has to be shut down because, you know, it's not, we're supposed to be helping the city with these taxes, or it's not, you know, I just think maybe in education, more in education along with enforcement to this might.
Yeah, so the one thing is that, I mean, for most of the larger illicit shops, they've already been visited by OCM.
Okay.
They've already been placarded. They know what they're doing is illicit, and they're choosing not to go the legal route because of the financial, you know, gain. As Damien said, it's substantial. They know exactly kind of what they're doing. And again, to Damien's point too is, right, our narcotics investigators are focused on fentanyl, they're focused on, you know, large trafficking. We don't want to take a step back to the 1980s as it relates to the war on drugs. These are administrative tools. They have more to do with land use and the types of businesses than saying that, you know, pot is illegal. I know it was brought up at one of the, you know, the prior things about, you know, look, this isn't about going into someone's house and raiding it or raiding their personal vehicle. This is about a business enterprise and how the city regulates that business enterprise versus, you know, what's allowed under the state law. And the other thing too, real quick, is we, you know, have exceptions for kind of, you know, de minimis use. If there is a, you know, a local corner store that is found to be selling some small amounts of pot, they're not subject to this. Like, we're talking about the purpose-built retails that are selling
sticker
a
shops?
ton of, exactly, sticker shops selling a ton of product. They know what they're doing, and you know, this is not to shut down legitimate businesses that happen to sell a few illicit gummies on the side from time to time.
And okay, and then I know that some council members brought up they were worried about like, what was it, people's rights being, some people brought up that people's rights being.
Oh, I think that was probably me. I think there was like and I went back and forth with the our city attorney about there was constitutional argument made like in the city when they were doing like kind of a crackdown. I think they won, but it's my understanding that this would function a bit differently.
Okay.
And like whatever. I should have refreshed on that.
There was a due process issue with what the city had.
right.
The city had a little bit more heavy-handed than the due process that we have here,
Okay.
which involves, you know, a temporary closure, and you have to follow it up by a court order, as opposed to the city, which, you know, invented this process, which is a lot more, you know, basically if city government or NYPD say it's like it. So that's, I think, what we'll do is a due process question. And I think that ours, you know, addresses that quite well.
In the city, they went in there under the auspices that people were selling tobacco. And then if they found them selling cannabis, then they did the enforcement. But in some of those situations, those shops weren't selling tobacco at all. And that was all. And then to your point, I volunteer my time. I don't know if you guys realize I'm the president of the Cannabis Association of New York. So I volunteer my time all week long doing exactly this, trying to educate the public. And I'm more than happy and more than willing to do that more and explain to people what the license process is, what options they have, how they can go for it. Of course, that doesn't necessarily guarantee they would get a license because it has to do with the state and what's available and OCB and the whole 9 yards. But even still, I would never back away from that. I think knowledge is power. And I think that's the only key, really, ultimately, to getting your community to where you need it. But I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, it's, so this is a local law, so this is one of those things where there's gotta be a public, like, the timeline is not like, even if this were to be voted on tomorrow or in a special meeting on Thursday or something like that, it wouldn't go into effect for, if someone can remind me the time frame, but it's.
Yeah.
There is, even if this were to be moved quickly, there's still a several week period that an education plan or some sort of rollout could be taking place, similar to the way Councilman Hotchkiss pushed with Good Cause.
Yeah.
That there's a, it doesn't go into effect the day that it's voted on or the day that it's signed.
I
but
mean,
there's-
I think, like, to me, like, I like this law, mainly it's the education, I think needs to be there, but I'm worried about, one, we're not making the money, the revenue that the city could be making, that's like my main thing, and then the safety, I've been looking up on a lot of these, places, not really here, but a lot of them get robbed, there's a lot of crime around that, and I think it's more of a public safety issue also along with the other things. But to me, that's kind of the main thing of this all, is a public safety issue. And also to people, like, just breathe, if you put all your money into this and then someone who doesn't do what they're supposed to do just comes and they can, work the loopholes around it, that's honestly not fair either. So that's just my opinion.
Is it, my understanding is like the process for getting a license has kind of evolved over the last couple of years. Is that accurate, or is that just, well, maybe it's just like my interpretation of like more licenses.
It's license types. In the beginning, what caused some of the delays for the rollout from the state perspective is that they started with social equity candidates and applicants first. And then what happened was other people that also wanted to get licenses ultimately sued and said that it's unconstitutional in terms of how you delineated who would be first in line. The process for getting a license is basically the same thing, right? You've got to still clear with the state, like your true party interest information, and apply and do those different things. Where the state has issues is they haven't had the resources oftentimes to, number one, enforce the law prior to doing the rollout, which is what created this. And then when some of those lawsuits happened, the market was delayed in opening. So then it just started a whole host of things that went wrong. But the process is basically the same. It just seen delays along the way for numerous issues that would take much longer than we have today to talk about.
But I guess kind of to that point though, since we have the cameras rolling, we have the press here, for the individuals that are currently not doing the right thing, what would there be there maybe first 2 or 3 steps, maybe not the whole steps, to try and get right?
They would have to apply for licenses with the Office of Cannabis Management through a portal, and if that portal reopens. At the same time, the Office of Cannabis Management is trying to do, I think they're going to do 1,700 licenses in this round. And then there's been talk, there was a November or December queue rather of people that applied, which was another, I think, 4,000 licenses. That's been the argument lately. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
But there's a whole host of people that are already in the queue. So the idea would have been, if and maybe some of these people are in the queue, I couldn't tell you, but the idea is, if you need a license, you would apply with the Office of Cannabis Management, similar to what you would do, not to get in the weeds, but similar to what you would do if you wanted to get a liquor license. You would apply at the SLA.
The other thing too is the first thing they should do is stop selling cannabis illegally, because if we have knowledge or evidence that despite repeated warnings from OCM, despite a knowledge that this is not something they should be doing, I think that there's a push at the state level that those individuals should never be allowed to get licenses either. So the first step is to stop the illicit activity, and then yes, move towards getting a retail license.
Can I ask you, Damien, maybe personal, how much would it cost, like, how much did money does it cost to open up a legal shop?
It depends on your build out.
Mhm.
I've seen most build outs between $100,000 and $200,000 build outs for the stores. There's a lot of things that are prerequisites we have to meet at the state level in terms of our security systems. Also, for those folks that actually have DASNY stores, they're locked into a certain amount of FTs they have
Can
to
you
have.
say, what's a DASNY store? Sorry.
So DASNY store would have been, if they were able to get funding or borrow money from the state to open the stores.
Oh.
And so, but at the same time, some of those build outs are really, really expensive. If I'm not mistaken, I think that the store on Port Street has a balance of somewhere over $1 million. I don't know how they pay that back. How do you pay that back? When somebody on the street selling, you got $1 million note, $1 million note in this town, and then somebody across the street is selling stuff freely,
Not
with
paying taxes.
not paying anything.
taxes, yeah.
And nor were they made to build the same security systems or the same mechanisms or the same cabinets or the same door locking things or hide the same security. I mean, by law, we have to do those things, which can run the bill up, not because we choose to, even though some of them are not bad ideas, but we're locked into that stuff, right? We have to be approved. I had to pass an inspection for that stuff, a walkthrough with them, and a walkthrough with the banks. How about that? Right? Want to see what you're doing, where you're putting your money, and the cost. Do you realize when we have cash pickups, it costs us up to $1,000 to get the money picked up? Think about that. And we can't even put it in the bank because we have to go to cannabis. It has to be delivered to the Fed and then moved to a cannabis legal bank. You make money at your business, and for us, it costs $1,000 to pick up the money and bring it to the bank. That's the fee. Nobody else has that. It's in the shoebox underneath the bed.
Mattress.
So it's, yes, the mattress or in the walls, right? That's how we do it. So that's a joke. The point I'm trying to make is it's not an unregulated versus regulated. This is really more an issue of equity. Can you said it best? What is fair and equitable? That's not fair. If there were no rules, let me know. I'm sure we could operate, but right now we obey, right? We do what's right, and we're concerned about our communities.
And helping the community.
Of course,
too.
and we do it. We
Important.
absolutely do
Yeah.
it. We've always done it.
How long you been open, Damien? So
2 years. It was actually 2 years in February.
0 complaints about Just Breathe, not one single public safety issue, not one police issue. It's been a bright spot for downtown. It's brought visitors in from out of town. I mean, it's been nothing but positive. And that goes to show when you do it right, you can have a huge impact. So I think the other thing too, and Hanasa mentioned it too, just on the time, I know I presented this last year and there was a bit of a delay. I do think that there's some time sensitivity to it. I think that in talking to some individual members, that there's support on council to move this forward. I think, now is the time to do it. We can utilize, the existing periods where we have to slow this down with a local law to do some of that education, to do some of that public relations on this is coming. Let's get prepared. We don't want to have to enforce this, so we'd love nothing more than the chilling effect of this law to cause these places to voluntarily shut down. But I think that it's really something we need to move forward on. I don't want to hurt any legal business, and the time is, I think, past due to move forward.
But I understand all those arguments. I think like ultimately, like as long as there's like a gray market, if we're say there's like 5 illegal shops and those all get shut down the same day that this law passes, I imagine there'll be different ways for people to move.
Well, so there's a piece that you haven't brought up here, but when we talked on the phone last year, you brought up, and that is the perception of marijuana stores. And that, as the mayor mentioned, no complaints, like it's like clean, it's nice, but but the overall perception of his type of business is impacted by people that are smoking up in the store and the doors are open and like
That's right.
the storefront aspect of the business is part of there's many layers to the issue, but that's one component that hasn't been brought up here. And that's the kind of, for the legal businesses, the impact on the perception of marijuana stores when there's a physical storefront, as opposed to, I think what you're probably alluding to is home delivery, gray market home delivery kind of a service, which while has the tax impact and has some of the health impacts, it's unregulated, all of that, doesn't have the impact of the kind of the general public, persons who don't partake
Right.
and have no knowledge other than the stores that they walk by and what they see or and the behaviors that they're seeing.
Look, I don't think you'll ever not have a gray market. And I don't think this law is trying to eliminate the gray market. Specifically, this, I think what the mayor is trying to say is that when you have enterprise-driven businesses that are flipping more than $250,000 per month and not reinvesting that back in your community and help those kids in that damn school or whatever we need to do, that's a problem. That's not right. That's number one. Number two, some of the other folks, and not everybody's a bad operator, but some folks, they're questionable in terms of how they operate. And it's also a tragedy that you can go to a sticker shop and see all kinds of things. And for the people that come to us, we get a lot of pre-retirees, people that have ailments, need, pain medicine, or can't sleep, this type of things, like middle-aged folks. But if they see that at an illegal shop, and they see some of the behavior that might be questionable, it impacts us, and people automatically assume they don't want to come downtown to Just Breathe because it's downtown, and they don't think it's a good place to be or it's unsafe. That's not true. That's not true. And what perpetuates that misnomer is the fact that you can find sticker shops in and around the city. And so then it keeps people out of the city of Binghamton, which is really kind of cool. It's unfair for Binghamton, it's unfair for all of our inhabitants, and it's unfair for the folks in this community to be labeled that way. And things like that just perpetuate that perspective, to your point. So I think that at some point in time, yeah, you're always going to see people in a project, like maybe flip it a little bit here. I mean, none of us are Pollyanna, right? We know the deal. Like, you're going to see that here and there, but the notion that you would have several businesses bringing in tons and tons of product, I mean, almost like something you'd see on a TV show, really should be addressed. I mean, you got to set priorities for your town.
So I'm in the wrong business then.
Well, not all money's good money though.
True.
Ultimately, that has a consequence. You talk about the robberies, you talk about the crime, and then where does it stop? It's weed, then it's mushrooms, then it's something else. And then what happens when it gets to your kid? When somebody brings something and then somebody else uses it, and then next thing you know, you get the call and you get somebody tried it in the locker room at the school, and now you can't explain. And then they're looking at Just Breathe. I've done my part, and we continue to do so. That's out, right? It has to be a shared responsibility to do the right thing. Cannabis is really volatile and a good thing if implemented correctly. I mean, that's what we're on here. It's a progressive thing we're trying to do here. We all got to pull together, or we'll fail. That's my story.
I'm trying to think if there was any more nuggets from our conversation that haven't been addressed, but that was the main one that came to me.
Anybody else have any other questions? Nate?
That's camera, dude.
Oh, I'm not even here?
No.
I've been right here the whole time. I guess, like, I don't know. My perception is if there was a easier path to get people licenses, that would be the best for, like, whatever public safety measures, and if the taxation is like a priority, that would be.
Well, you can do
But
both, though.
I mean, right, but I think that's just kind of how I see this playing out. It'll just like be a bigger gray market if there's not like a trying to move people from like gray market to like legitimate like regulated things. But that, I mean, that's just how I see this playing
But,
out.
I mean, I feel like
Offering
if
too much
someone
resistance.
knows that they're doing wrong, like why reward it? Like it's like to me, it's like one of those things like, all right, like if we can educate you on, like we can try our best to educate, but you know that you're not doing right, you're selling illegal like products, or you're not doing it the same way that Just Breathe is doing it. Why are we like concerned about how they feel? I don't know. That's just my
I actually think the opposite is true. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you why. By law, we couldn't advertise this legal shop because the state wanted to legislate down to lowest common denominator, thinking, fearful that we would attract kids into the stores. So we can't use certain color lights, we can't hang signs, we can't put a cannabis leaf on the door. But you can if you have an illegal shop, or I'm sorry, an unregulated shop. So what's happening is, in essence, these stores that are regulated could burn much brighter, could do much more. They're just, it's like a plant that can't grow. It's like they don't get enough sun, they don't get enough exposure, they don't get enough water. What's happening is, because there is absolutely no regulation on the other side of the fence, they can run and just absolutely accelerate growth because there's no restriction, and all the restriction is given to the legal shop owner or the regulated shop owner. It's just not true. Cannabis is cannabis is cannabis. And if you can offer great cannabis, and we're getting there, right, at reasonable prices, ultimately it'll take care of itself. But it's the framework for the market that's the key to making it go the right way. No matter what you do, you're not going to explode the gray market. We know there's $7 to $8 billion in the gray market one way or the other, right? It's just where are you funneling it? If other regulated shops stop tomorrow, there wouldn't be $20 million in the state. There'd still be $8 billion, right? It's the same number. The question is, where are you putting it, and how much do you give back to the city of Binghamton? How much do you give back to the county? And how much do you give back to the state? That's the question. The pie will always be what the pie is, right? And I like pie. I love pie. It'll never change. It'll always be there. Your best hope to grow it, in my mind, would be through regulated channels. Because then what gets measured gets done, and you can actively push to generate more, turn up those engines, and then put more money back in your communities. You'll never do that with a hole in the boat. Never. So I believe, for that reason, I believe it's the opposite. And again, the whole strategies, it has nothing to do with the folks that, there's always going to be a gray market. That's fine. I understand that. But some of these folks, man, that just are just mowing down tons and tons of money and resources that just doesn't help our communities. I don't think that's right. That's wrong.
It hasn't been brought up, so maybe it's not relevant, but is there any connection between the unregulated marijuana that's being sold and organized crime, or are these shops like individuals who are just like making a buck? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure how it's all kind of, if it's all connected together or if it's kind of separate.
I think organized crime is kind of a difficult, it's a nebulous kind of term, but I can say with full confidence, when you're dealing in cash of the volumes that these stores are dealing with and can't go to a bank or can't go to that sort of thing, you will have violence. There have been violent crimes associated with these illicit shops. There have been neighborhood disturbances dealing with it. And there have been, at least to my knowledge, at least one attempted homicide dealing with the money associated with unregulated shops in the city of Binghamton.
Who's running this meeting?
Me,
Yeah.
I am, I just want, like, my mind was already made up before we even had this meeting. I've been looking into it, talking to different people, so my mind was already made up already. I just wanted to give council and people a chance before we brought it to the floor, just to kind of see if we could have any more discussion by bringing the mayor and Damien in on it, to see like if anybody had, if they were worried about anything. Is anybody else worried about anything? Do they have any other questions?
I really appreciate your your idea about having the education piece.
Yes, I
and,
think that's good, but like I said, I think we need to enforce it, but educating both, I think is, sorry, Nate. But I do think, both, it definitely needs to be done.
So I think what would be a great plan of action is, obviously getting this on an agenda, getting the vote that kicks off the period where I have to hold the public hearing, and then, assuming council approval, we can brainstorm on messaging, before the law is signed and it goes to the state to actually allow the BPD to do this, that we're communicating, this has been passed by council, it's moving forward on the process, here's what folks can expect. And by the way, here are all of the resources to enter the legal market and get your business and get involved, whether it's
or here's who to lobby about fixing the portal.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
And I think too, maybe like adding an amendment in there, just kind of like a study. So like we can come back and say like, this is definitely like working, like we're doing the right thing, and this is definitely working with the education piece, like we could kind of amend in there.
Yeah, there was a part of it where we have to send bi-weekly reports to OCM. So obviously, if we're sending those to OCM, we can make those available to the
Yeah,
council.
just to something. Yeah, just to something like we have having like a study to show that what we're doing, is everything. I think when people think of laws or when they think of enforcements, they get scared right away. But I think with the education piece, maybe a town hall, just something in there, so that way when it happens, it's not like the city is just like coming at, these unregulated places. Like we're coming from a good place and we're trying to help the city. More importantly, investing back in the city with the right.
So
the places.
you mentioned study, you mentioned the existing reports and just making sure that council is included on them.
Yeah,
you want an actual study, or is it?
Just like with the year, like so we can go back and look at it, just like the records, we can use the same records
so I just want to make sure that we actually get, if we're going to make a change to it, since things have to sit for 7 days and all these types of things, that the change would be that the reports referenced in here would be modified to say, and a copy will be provided to
city council. Yeah.
Or kept on file with the clerk's office.
Yes,
or
something we can go back and
something that we can go back to, and everybody, at least in this room, is okay with that. It's something I can bring to Bob so that we can. I think it has to sit for 7 days, so I don't want to waste time on not being clear on what the modification requested is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think even this section about send bi-weekly reports, whatever it is, it can just be
added in.
Yeah.
Copy to council president and clerk's office or something.
We're allowed under
Yes.
law. Yeah, there's no problem on that.
Thank you. And what do you think, Damien? What do you think about like having while we're in this process? What about a town hall? Would you be open to coming with something? How you educated all of us today. I mean, I've been talking to you about this for a bit, but like you said, like, are you okay with that?
Absolutely. I even thought that, and I talked to Sarah Wolfs about this, we'd be happy to even do a series of like PSA style media things.
I love it.
Especially talk about the impact that we can have in the community. I think it bothers me that there's not enough that's displayed or shared with the community about what we try to do in the community. I think that's going to be the key. But again, it's all about persuasion, right? So we're trying to show people that we are good corporate partners and we are good engines, for our towns. That's the only way. I mean, you have to do the right thing until you just can't, right? And the idea is ultimately the cream rises to the top, right? If you just keep hitting shots, keep working hard, working to improve. The public opinion will take care of everything else. People won't go to places that are unregulated because they just won't give them the service that they want, And we find the more that we do in the community, the more things that we support, the more it resonates with folks and they come back. And that's the idea. You want to leave it better than how you found it, right? I won't live forever.
That's right.
I'll be gone in a few decades.
That's it.
Hopefully a few decades.
I
I gotta
know,
just
right?
lay off the pizza, you know what I'm saying?
Chicken.
I do love chicken. Let's keep it real. But that's the idea. So yeah, I would have no problem with that or
And I would
even
like
going
to,
further.
I would like to help you too, like with
Yeah, I'd be happy
that
to.
kind of like something that we can kind of, like educate people on. I would really love to like work with you on
Okay.
behalf of
Yeah.
council with that, just to kind of get that.
Do a neighborhood tour, a neighborhood assembly tour.
Yeah,
or
we could,
something.
yeah, we definitely could kind of, I know at our West Side meeting, it's like, we're just trying to get people like caught up with current events, because a lot of people don't watch the city council meetings. So the neighborhood meetings, like people come and talk about whatever is going on in the neighborhood.
But now we got the new cameras, so maybe the higher quality
Yeah,
production
hopefully.
value of our
This is-
council meetings will draw more people in.
This is what excites me about cannabis. And what's funny is I'm a straight edge. I've never smoked a joint. I don't drink. I don't smoke. But what I find is that cannabis is such a common denominator that from there you can reach other communities and find the segue to get things done. Just this discussion may actually turn an appetite to make more people look at what's happening and have an interest in other things you're talking about. That's the power of cannabis. It's amazing. Never seen anything like it.
You never smoked, no, again.
No, I've never smoked. It's the truth.
Yes.
But I like chicken.
I know, I've cooked.
Yes, it's amazing. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I guess,
you're gonna follow up with Corporation Council about adding that line in?
yeah, or
do
you can.
Or you want me to?
Yeah,
I'll
you can,
run up
that's
and-
fine, you're going up there, that's fine, you
Yeah.
can do that. And then I guess I'll talk to council about it. And we'll go from there and trying to pass it. We'll start with like maybe a town hall or something like that, just to kind of educate people, regarding this law. And then we have before it goes into, we have a,
The mayor has a public
Yeah,
hearing.
public
We
hearing
don't,
about
we
it.
don't have a.
Yeah,
public-
but,
So
well-
he gets the public hearing is after we vote,
yeah, but I think
typically. And I
Yeah.
don't think it has necessarily, I
It has to
don't,
be.
it has to be.
it has to
Okay.
be after we
Yeah.
vote.
Yeah, the
that's
timeline,
fine. But I think maybe it's, I don't know if like maybe a town hall before the vote or town hall after the vote. I don't know what you're thinking, Hadassah.
I mean, if we're gonna do, if we're gonna modify this, it's gotta sit with its final version for 7 days.
Okay.
During that 7 days,
Yeah.
because I think, it's very disempowering to hold a town hall after it's already been voted on.
Yeah.
Although, as Councilman Kavanaugh has brought up to me before, as a reminder that even if council were to pass, if the town hall, for example, generated enough information to make the mayor not want to sign it, then and end up vetoing it, so it went back to council, then the information from the town hall could be fed back into council's decision whether or not to overturn the veto. So this very kind of a wonky way of thinking about it, but there are mechanisms for taking that feedback, even if it is after the vote. But given we need at least 7 days with the modification that's being proposed, there could be a town hall during that
Town hall.
during that
And then after
window.
that, we'll vote.
And that 7 days is gonna push us into the in-between time for between tomorrow's meeting and the following meeting. So
Mhm.
there's actually, we're kind of looking at more of like a two-week period, basically.
Mhm.
So that might give a little bit more lead time for having a town hall.
Just a
But
friendly reminder
Yeah.
that that 7 days technically excludes Sunday, so factor 8 in your head.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, basically, it's
Just a reminder.
if we're not voting on it tomorrow, then it's, and we're not creating a special business meeting, which would be up to the president of council to make that
Mhm.
determination. He is not present, and I don't speak for him on any of that. Then we're really looking at a 2-week period, because you and I together have the power to sign this out,
Mhm.
just because it can be signed out via committee.
Mhm.
So, so saying two weeks, in that 2-week period, that seems like a reasonable amount of time to be able to schedule a town hall. A week seems a little fast to maybe pull that together and make sure we're gonna have people, and then,
And I'll be in touch with
and it
both
would
of you
be
guys.
a
too.
town hall chaired by you
Yeah,
as
that's
the
And I'm gonna
MPA.
see, yeah, and I'm gonna see if Damien could attend one of those town halls too, just if possible, just with any
Sure.
questions, that would be great. The mayor, I don't know if you guys want to come, so we've done our due diligence on educating people first. And we're going to vote on it, and then after that, we'll go from there, and then the other steps. But yeah, just like an education piece, kind of doing our due diligence on that.
Yeah,
I mean, that
but I don't
process-
think I think the timeline can work so that doing that does not bump it out further.
That's fine.
And Sarah, local law doesn't require a public hearing by council.
No.
just by
No,
mayor.
just by you.
Just by you.
Just by you.
Yeah, so obviously it's not being voted on next week, so it'd be the second meeting, or is there, how many meetings in March are there? We already got the
3.
first one?
Is it? No, second.
So tomorrow is the 12th, and we're gonna have another one on the 26th,
Okay,
a business
Yeah.
meeting.
so it would be on the agenda for the 26th business meeting, which would provide almost 2.5 weeks to have that town hall.
Yeah, that's fine. And also, before it even gets signed out, I really want to kind of talk to everyone, because the main goal is, even if me and Hadassah sign it out, I want everybody to be on the same page in order for it to pass. Like, if there's nothing like bringing something to the floor and it doesn't pass, but I think like talking to everyone, just saying, hey, you guys, if you missed this meeting, please take a look at, the MPA meeting online, and so that way if anybody has any questions before we bring it to the floor.
Yeah.
So just giving, that's our time frame, but
Yeah.
just giving if anybody has any time. And then during this time, if they have any questions, is it okay to refer them to you
Yeah, of
and to
course.
Damien?
Of course.
Sure.
And
Thank you.
hopefully, again, sounds like everyone's in support. Getting an up or down vote would be important, because, if it's not something that council wants to support,
We have to figure out other
then,
mechanisms.
I need to kind of think about alternative
Of course.
methods. So,
Of course.
but I'm hopeful that everyone can be in
Yes.
agreement.
Yeah, I think that's the way.
And I'm happy with the idea of, I think that there's gaps in the city in terms of information and record keeping that should be going through the clerk's office. So I like the idea of pulling that in to this and making that part of practice, that the data is all flowing through the clerk's office.
Yes.
Like it should be, as their heads of our record keeping. Perfect. All right.
Does anybody
Motion to
have any
adjourn.
questions?
Oh,
Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
No, you're
Second.
taking a motion to adjourn.
You're taking,
Taking a motion to
I'm making
adjourn.
the motion.
Thank you.
You're seconding? Great.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Thank
Aye.
you so much.